Just Diane. The entire Windsor family lunch reportedly fell apart over a single word. And that word was grandmother. Princess Charlotte, just 9 years old, was sitting at what should have been an ordinary private family lunch when she calmly delivered a sentence that left the room completely frozen. King Charles was there. William and Catherine were there with all 3 children. Camilla had been deliberately keeping the conversation light, knowing recent tensions had already made private family gatherings uncomfortable. For a while, everything appeared normal. Then Camilla casually described herself as belonging to the children's grandparent generation. Charlotte looked up and calmly said she already knew who her grandmothers were, and she would not call Camilla grandmother. The room went silent. No shouting, no dramatic reaction, just absolute silence. And that silence said everything. Because Charlotte wasn't throwing a tantrum. She wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. She was making a decision. And Camilla knew immediately that something much deeper was happening. Police Scarlet Palace shock. Charlotte refuses the title. Charles reportedly asked his granddaughter why she had said it. His voice remained low, but the question carried the authority of both a grandfather and a king. He expected an apology. Instead, Charlotte reportedly explained that some family names have to be earned by the way someone makes you feel. Then she asked if she could leave the table. Catherine nodded. Charlotte pushed her chair back. The scrape of that chair across the floor suddenly sounded louder than anything anyone had said. Camilla remained frozen. Charles looked toward William, and William did something that immediately changed the meaning of the entire confrontation. He did not correct his daughter. He simply watched her. Catherine followed Charlotte into the corridor. And that's where the real story began. Police car light just in. This wasn't about one word. IT had been building for weeks. Behind that closed door, Charlotte revealed that this wasn't the first time Camilla had made her uncomfortable. Weeks earlier, something had happened during a private family encounter. Charlotte had kept it to herself. She hadn't complained. She hadn't demanded an apology. She simply carried the hurt. For Charlotte, this wasn't really about a title. It was about what the word represented. Trust, safety, family, someone who makes you feel protected instead of pressured. Catherine immediately understood, and she refused to turn her daughter's feelings into some royal performance. Meanwhile, in another room, Camilla was dealing with the same moment from a completely different perspective. She told Charles she could tolerate hostile headlines. She could tolerate years of public comparison, but rejection from his granddaughter? That hurt differently. Charles tried to reassure her. Then he hesitated before saying Charlotte would eventually come around. And that hesitation only made Camilla feel worse. Because Camilla had spent years trying to find acceptance inside Charles's family. And now the youngest generation seemed unwilling to give it. Police Scarlet royal shock. Charlotte's next revelation changes everything. William later asked Catherine the question both parents had been avoiding. Did Charlotte mention Diana? Catherine confirmed that their daughter had become increasingly curious about the grandmother she never knew. Charlotte had seen photographs. She had heard stories. William had spoken about Diana warmly and personally. But Catherine revealed something more troubling. Charlotte wasn't simply idealizing Diana. There had been an earlier interaction with Camilla that had changed how she understood the situation. William stopped outside Charlotte's bedroom before entering. His hand reached toward the door, then dropped. Because this was no longer about royal harmony. This was about his daughter. A 9-year-old child had somehow been pulled into decades of adult family history. And William now had to decide whether to act as a future king protecting royal order, or as a father protecting his daughter's trust. He chose the second. Police Scarlet 1 minute ago. The Diana moment that Charlotte never forgot. When William finally entered Charlotte's room, she told him what had happened weeks earlier. There had been no screaming. No argument, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet room. A photograph of Diana, and one sentence. A sentence the adults apparently forgot almost immediately. Charlotte didn't. During a private family heritage gathering at Windsor, William had shown the children photographs and personal objects from earlier generations. He described Diana simply as their grandmother. He spoke about her warmth. He never used her memory against anyone. Charlotte stopped beside one photograph and quietly called Diana her grandmother. Camilla entered and heard her. She hesitated, then told Charlotte she shouldn't become too attached to people she never knew when she had family around her. The words were calm, but their impact wasn't. Charlotte closed the album and asked William if they could continue another day. William knew something had changed. But there was more. Charlotte had forgotten a bracelet. She returned quietly, and before entering the room fully, she overheard Camilla telling an aide that constant references to Diana could become confusing for the children. Charlotte heard enough. To her, the message felt devastating. Remembering her grandmother was becoming a problem, and she kept that pain completely to herself. Police Scarlight Palace in crisis. William finally confronts Camilla. By evening, William had reached a conclusion. This wasn't about Charlotte behaving badly. It was about why a child had reached a point where she felt she had to defend the memory of a grandmother she had never known. William did not summon advisors. He didn't request a formal royal meeting. He asked Camilla to speak privately, and when the door closed, he told her there would be no discussion about Charlotte's behavior until they discussed what had happened first. Camilla expected pressure to repair the lunch. Instead, she found a father who believed his daughter had been carrying an emotional burden created by adults. Charles was deliberately kept out of the room. William didn't want the conversation turned into a question of rank. This wasn't about who outranked Charlotte. It was about who had the right to define her private feelings. William described the photograph, the forgotten bracelet, the comment Charlotte had overheard. Then he asked the question Camilla had been dreading. Did you tell her that remembering Diana was confusing? Camilla answered carefully. She said Charlotte was never supposed to hear the comment. William's expression hardened. His response was simple. Intention doesn't erase impact. Police Scarlight, just in. Camilla finally reveals why Diana's name hurts. Camilla's restraint finally broke. She admitted something deeply personal. She had spent years being compared with a woman who had died long before the current family structure existed. Every mention of Diana could make her feel as though there was no emotional space left for anyone else. She feared Charlotte's growing attachment to Diana's story would eventually become another comparison she could never win. William listened, but he didn't back down. His daughter wasn't asking Camilla to compete with Diana. She was simply learning about her own family. Then William drew the line. Nobody had forbidden Charlotte from caring about Diana. Nobody would encourage hostility. But nobody would command the girl to use a family word she didn't genuinely feel. Camilla asked whether this was merely William's opinion, or a new household rule. William's answer was brutal in its simplicity. For my children, Catherine and I decide. Camilla went silent, because she understood exactly what that meant. Charles could be king, but forcing his granddaughter to manufacture affection could make royal authority look cruel instead of strong. Police Scarlight Royal Crisis. Charles must choose between Camilla and William. Within the hour, Charles learned exactly what William had said, and the king demanded a private meeting with his son. Charles now faced an impossible choice: protect his wife's dignity, or recognize his son's responsibility to protect his daughter. Royal protocol can control public conduct. It can determine how Charlotte addresses the Queen in official settings. But it cannot manufacture affection, and William knew it. Charles met William privately without aides or secretaries. The king described the situation as a threat to family unity. William made his position clear. Charlotte would remain respectful. She would follow official protocol. But the private word grandmother could not be ordered. Charles admitted that Camilla had been hurt more deeply than she had publicly shown. William didn't dismiss her pain, but his answer was immediate. Charlotte was hurt first. His daughter was too young to understand decades of royal tension, and she had no power when an adult made her feel that remembering Diana was somehow disloyal. Charles asked whether Catherine supported William. The answer was yes. Together, they had decided Charlotte could use Camilla's proper royal form of address when protocol required it. But privately, she would not be forced to call her grandmother, and George and Louis would be given the same freedom. Charles removed his glasses. He placed them beside a closed folder. Then came the decision. He would not compel Charlotte. Police Scarlight Palace in crisis. Camilla makes a shocking move. Charles believed the matter could remain behind Windsor's closed doors. He was wrong. When Camilla learned Charles would not overrule William, her behavior changed. The first consequence wasn't a statement. It was an empty chair. Camilla quietly withdrew from a private family tea where Charlotte was expected to attend. She told Charles she saw no point in creating another uncomfortable encounter. To outsiders, it might have looked like restraint. Inside the family, it felt much more serious. Catherine worried Charlotte would blame herself. William suspected the withdrawal could become a form of pressure. and Charles watched his wife retreat from the very family she had spent years trying to become part of. Camilla continued every formal duty, but private invitations became different. Whenever Charlotte was expected to attend, Camilla began hesitating, and Charlotte noticed. She saw the empty seat at tea, then asked her mother, was Camilla staying away because of her? Catherine answered firmly, adults are responsible for their own choices. Charlotte didn't have to repair every adult around her simply because she had spoken honestly, but the question still stayed with the young princess. Was the queen angry? Catherine told her that hurt and anger were not the same thing. Police car light, just in. Charlotte refuses to accept the blame. Later, Camilla told Charles she felt reduced to someone who had to ask whether his grandchildren were comfortable before entering a room. Charles listened, but this time, he didn't simply defend her pain. He told Camilla something she didn't want to hear. Staying away would not make Charlotte trust her. Withdrawal might protect Camilla from another painful moment, but it also placed emotional weight back onto the child. For the first time, Charles said the repair had to begin without expecting the word grandmother. Then William learned Camilla was considering skipping another private family gathering. His concern hardened. If every absence followed Charlotte into another room, his daughter might begin believing she was responsible for whether adults appeared or disappeared. That was exactly the burden William and Catherine had wanted to prevent. But Catherine noticed something unexpected. Charlotte wasn't happy that Camilla was gone. When Camilla briefly returned after the tea, she stopped beside the untouched chair. She placed one hand on it, but she never sat down. That empty chair suddenly looked less like protection and more like surrender. Charlotte had rejected a word. She had never rejected a person, and William finally understood the difference. Police car light royal shock. Charlotte and Camilla face each other alone. One private conversation changed everything. No king, no future king, no advisors, no cameras, no palace officials, just Charlotte and Camilla. Catherine arranged the meeting only after Charlotte said she wanted it. William agreed on one condition. Nobody would use the conversation to demand an apology. Nobody would force a new name. Charles gave Camilla the same instruction. Reconciliation had to begin without conditions. Charlotte brought the same photograph of Diana. She placed it on the table, then told Camilla that she believed the queen wanted her to stop caring about someone important to her father. Camilla didn't interrupt. She admitted that the photograph had touched an insecurity she should never have placed on a child. She explained that hearing Diana discussed sometimes made her feel as though she would forever be compared with a memory she could never compete against. Charlotte's answer stunned her. She wasn't asking Camilla to compete. And suddenly, Camilla understood. The adult fear had been pushed onto a child who had simply been trying to understand her family. Camilla apologized. She admitted she was wrong to suggest Charlotte could become too attached to someone she never knew. She admitted she was wrong to describe those memories as confusing. And then came the most important part. She did not ask Charlotte to call her grandmother. Charlotte accepted the apology, but said she still wanted to call her Camilla privately when appropriate and use her proper royal title during official occasions. Camilla agreed. Charlotte reached the door, then stopped. She turned around and asked whether Camilla would still attend the upcoming family birthday gathering. For the first time, the invitation was personal, not ceremonial. Camilla said yes. Police car light 1 minute ago. Charlotte's single gesture sends Britain into a frenzy. Days later, Charlotte and Camilla appeared together. The public didn't know what had happened privately. It saw only one moment. Charlotte stepped outside a family gathering. She paused beside Camilla, and instead of the familiar embrace everyone expected, she offered her hand. Within hours, the photograph dominated broadcasts and front pages. One headline described it as the royal distance. Television panels replayed the moment repeatedly. Was Charlotte rejecting Camilla? Was the family still divided? Had the situation become even worse? Nobody outside the family knew the truth. Inside, William understood exactly what the gesture meant. It wasn't punishment. It was the middle ground Charlotte and Camilla had agreed upon. William and Catherine refused to stage affection for cameras. Their only instruction to Charlotte was simple: be respectful, be yourself. Then something unexpected happened. Camilla herself rejected the idea of using Charlotte to repair her public image. Charles considered whether the palace should explain the situation. William objected. Any statement explaining Charlotte's private feelings would expose a 9-year-old child to even more scrutiny. Camilla agreed. For the first time, she protected the boundary instead of fighting it. Police Garlight Palace shock. The rejection wasn't rejection at all. Charlotte later saw the newspaper beside William. She asked whether she had embarrassed Camilla again. William reassured her. Respectful honesty was not cruelty. Adults, he told her, had to stop demanding that children perform feelings simply because cameras were watching. The headlines called it rejection. The palace feared division. But inside the family, something else was happening. Charlotte had never taken back her original sentence. She didn't have to, because she had discovered something more important. Refusing a title didn't have to mean refusing a relationship. Camilla eventually accepted the same truth. Belonging cannot be created by royal position. Affection becomes weaker when demanded. And what began as one shocking sentence forced 3 generations of the monarchy to confront the difference between ceremonial loyalty and genuine family trust. Police Garlight final royal bombshell. Charlotte's refusal changes the family forever. At the final family gathering, Charlotte arrived beside William and Catherine. No special instructions. No warnings. No palace choreography. Charles entered with Camilla. And this time, Camilla didn't hesitate at the door. She stayed. No advisors managed the seating. No one staged a reunion. Charlotte used Camilla's name naturally in private conversation. Later, when the occasion became formal, she used the proper royal title. And that tiny distinction proved something enormous. Respect does not have to pretend to be intimacy. Camilla stopped waiting for the word that had caused the entire crisis. Instead, she asked Charlotte about something the young princess had mentioned during their private conversation. Charlotte was caught off guard. She realized Camilla had remembered. She had listened. She wasn't being managed. Charles noticed the change, and finally relaxed. Not because Camilla had won the title she once hoped to receive, but because bitterness no longer controlled the room. William saw it too. For the first time in weeks, he no longer looked ready to defend his daughter from the next emotional blow. Catherine understood what the adults had missed from the beginning. Charlotte's refusal had not created the conflict. It had exposed it. Diana's memory was never the real enemy. The fear surrounding that memory was. Camilla finally understood she didn't have to replace Diana to build something real with Charlotte. And Charlotte learned that protecting the grandmother she never knew didn't require punishing the woman standing in front of her. As the gathering ended, Charlotte paused beside Camilla, then asked whether she would come to another family occasion the following week. There was no forced embrace, no demanded title, no grand royal declaration. Camilla simply smiled and said she would like that very much. And that became the real meaning of Charlotte's refusal. She never called Camilla her grandmother, but she no longer needed rejection to defend the people she loved. The family finally stopped fighting over one word and started building a relationship that could survive without it.